All right, guys, joining us today on the program is Jin Ong. Trained as an osteopath, psychosomatic therapist, herbalist, and Western acupuncturist, Jin feels that Cathartic Release Therapist best describes what she does. She loves to dig deep, speak about the unspoken, and help people process unresolved emotions that hold them back from living the life they truly want. Jin is obsessed with the mind-body connection and how your physical body is a manifestation of your emotional state. She's the founder of the MetaMed holistic and integrative osteopath and chiropractic clinics in Wanaka and Queenstown, New Zealand. She also hosts the Art of Listening to Your Body podcast. Jin works with people with complex physical and emotional conditions that traditional and conventional therapies can't work out. In her personal life, she's the mum to a 5-year-old Violet who was born at home by lotus birth and married to a mountain guide. So with that, I'd like to welcome into the program, Jin Ong. Thanks for joining us today, Jin.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here, Jin. And Liz has given us, I guess, some cliff notes as to, what you do in terms of for your work. And, you've got what sounds like a beautiful little daughter and a loving husband. So what we'd really like to do, though, is invite you to share your origin story, how you've come to be the Jin Ong today. And please feel free to go back as far as you'd like and into as much detail as you like. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I have recently I'm trying out the title of an emotional cathartic release therapist because it started getting a little bit long saying I'm an osteopath, a psychosomatic therapist, a herbalist, and a Western acupuncturist, because I don't break it into this is what I'm going to do with you, and then I'm going to do herbal medicine, then I'm going to do Western acupuncture. It's just integrating all of those therapies to what the individual needs. How far should I go back? I was born in Melbourne, Australia. My parents are Malaysian Chinese, but I was brought up in a very Caucasian environment when I went to school. And I definitely had the influence of particularly my mum, who was like, you should be an accountant, a lawyer, or why don't you be a doctor? And then I remember I was talking to someone the other day, my dad was saying, you should become an actuarist because they make a lot of money. And I think from a young age, or definitely a teen, I was very much like, I am going to do what I want to do. I don't care about status. And when I first got into osteopathy, that was purely by chance. A friend of mine was at a uni open day. I couldn't find her. And she said, I'm looking at this thing called osteopathy. I had no idea what it was. I was not brought up in an environment where I went to physios or doctors. It was always just like, suck it up, deal with it. It's no big deal. And so I didn't really know what osteopathy was. And I ended up applying for it amongst pharmacy and I think chiropractic and myotherapy. And I happened to get into both of the universities that offered osteopathy in Melbourne at the time. And it was a hard slog. It was very academic, which I was brought up with a very academic science maths brain. So I think I learnt a lot of stuff. I can remember being in exams and visualizing what page number and where on the page that information was that I needed to extrapolate and write down on my exam. It was just kind of getting through it, but I learnt a lot, and I'm so grateful that I fell into that, whether that be luck or chance, I don't know, but that is really where my path along health started. My parents are both in healthcare, but more conventional healthcare. And I remember 4 years into practice, and I always talk about learning all these skills and techniques at university and institutions. And I talk to a lot of practitioners about this, is that we often get taught thinking that what we learn, the skills and techniques, are going to fix people. And for the most part, we see progression and we see results in our clients, but it's that small percentage of people that don't respond. And it was that small percentage of people that really got me down about my work. Like, oh gosh, why can I not help these people? And I started experiencing some really minor physical things. So I was getting a bit of tennis elbow on my left side. I was getting a little bit of eczema on my right hand, which would always go away when I stopped work. And I only made sense of it many years later. So they weren't debilitating, but I just noticed my body didn't feel completely right. And now when I look back at it, that tennis elbow was telling me I felt stuck with my work. I needed to make a decision about how to change my work and use my intuition more. And I was working pretty hard back then, but since I have stepped more into the work that I want to do and worked probably even harder, seen more clients per week, I actually had less pain. That spot of eczema also dropped away. However, there was a really pivotal point 4 years into practice. I ended up moving to Brisbane in Australia, and it was more of a city environment, more stress, more corporate, and more emotional issues that people were suppressing. And I happened to have a really minor climbing injury. Again, not major, but I do remember when I was at uni thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could experience every single condition under the sun for 24 hours so that I could empathize with my clients? And I know that this injury was probably just a muscle strain, but I went down this spiral of what it probably felt like to be a client who has no idea, but I was meant to have an idea because I was a therapist. And yeah, I just kept on seeking out treatment for this injury, and if someone could crack it or stick a needle in it, that it would make it better, but it didn't work. And I happened to stumble across this massage therapist, which I went to because he did needling, but he was actually really a psychosomatic therapist. And I don't know how to explain it. He talked to me a lot, which kind of frustrated me, but I kept on going back for some reason. He was talking to me on a much deeper level than anyone else had. And I started sending all of my chronic clients that I knew had emotional issues to him, and they were getting changes. So I was like, what is it that you're doing? And I want to learn it. And as well as having this really annoying shoulder, neck issue that kind of spiraled downwards and was really interfering with my work, I was also having massive skin issues. And that's what I say is my pain story and I didn't share it for a long time because I felt like as a musculoskeletal therapist, why would anyone want to listen to my skin problems? But I've since learned a lot. So ever since I was a teen, I remember starting to break out when I was 14, and my parents did what they knew best to do at that point in time. And I would go to the doctor and get antibiotics. I would get pimple creams, prescription creams, and then I would go on the pill, and then I would go on more antibiotics, and then eventually Roaccutane, and all these medications that we know that can be really harsh on the body. And they all worked amazingly while I was on them. But as soon as I came off them, everything would come back 10 times worse. And I was like, this is gross. I want to suppress this, take the medication again. And it wasn't until probably 10 years later, I realized how much damage and repair work I had to do. And that took a number of years, probably about 4 or 5 years. However, yeah, I was having massive skin problems as well when I was in Brisbane, and I was doing locum work as an osteopath. So I was only in Brisbane for 6 months. And while I was living in New Zealand, I had become obsessed with skiing. So I shifted back to New Zealand after 6 months, and I was skiing. I was enjoying the climate there, which was cold and dry, and my skin just recovered after 6 weeks. And I've done a lot of reading about books, quantum healing, Deepak Chopra stuff. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go back to Brisbane for another 6 month stint. I'm a completely new body. I've healed myself. And within a month, my skin just exploded, like to the date, 4 weeks. And that is actually what happened when I moved to Brisbane the first time. And I had learned about psychosomatics. I went and did the training. And I knew that I wasn't really expressing myself in my profession. So I wasn't talking to people about the deeper emotional stuff. And I knew that I wanted to, but I felt really awkward about doing it. So then when my skin flared up crazy, I started to break out in rashes. I started to get ulcers on my eyes. I was getting random fevers. I remember my ankles being so stiff walking down the stairs in my 2-story apartment that I had to hold onto the handrail. And I just thought, as a therapist, oh my gosh, I think I'm triggering an autoimmune reaction. But everything in my life was really great. My work, my pay, the friends that I had. But I wasn't expressing myself the way I wanted to in my work. Plus, the environment was not good for my constitution, if you're thinking from an Ayurvedic sense or a traditional Chinese medicine sense. So when my skin and all those health issues broke out, that was the sickest I ever was. And I see a lot of sick clients. I didn't want to end up even worse. So I thought, what have I got to do? I have to listen to what my body's telling me. And so when I broke out in this rash, it was really amusing where it broke out. It was along all of my joint lines, which I now know is all about solar plexus, identity, expression, confidence, trust in self, power, authority, and ego. And I just laughed. I was like, right, I had this appreciation for my body. I wasn't thinking, what is wrong with my body? I'm so frustrated with it. Like I learned with osteopathy that the body tells you when things aren't right. But what I never learned was things not being right on an emotional level. And yeah, so I ended up leaving that job only 3 weeks early and decided, yeah, New Zealand is where I need to be on the South Island. And if I look back environmentally, Brisbane's very hot and humid. And when I was in Wellington, it is much damper in New Zealand. And that's when I was getting my little eczema patch and my skin was quite bad as well. So moved back to New Zealand, skin cleared up, but I decided I was on this path to plan out the business that I was going to create, which was I'm going to express myself as the therapist I want to be, not the one that the registration board tells me to be and all that kind of stuff. And in the meantime, I was doing more locums around Australia and New Zealand, and I had this opportunity to test this work out on clients. So when I did the training, it all of a sudden gave me this permission to read the body and express what I was seeing in people's bodies, whereas previously I would have just kept it to myself. And yeah, I just started diving deep and used my intuition around understanding what emotions were behind people's physical issues, because a lot of people just go, it's physical, it's biomechanical. Well, I fell on my shoulder, and it's like, well, yeah, often we injure ourselves, but we don't always have long-lasting chronic pain. So why is it that you're not healing? So with the psychosomatics, it was a journey of also learning about Ayurveda and doshas and integrating Chinese medicine from different therapists that I had come across and worked with, my own upbringing and the clinical experience, the patterns that I was seeing repeatedly in people. And what was getting dissatisfying with my work was to keep on treating people and not feeling like I was making a difference on a physical level for a small minority, but more on an emotional level. And so, there's a number of things in this story, but I'll leave it to you guys to ask more questions. I had that few years to work out what I wanted my business to look like, planned it out, had a baby in the meantime, and just went full force into, I'm going to give this a go, get over my fear of failure. And it was the best thing I did. So I started the MetaMed clinics. Gav and I, we moved back to New Zealand with not much money. We were in Melbourne at the time, trying to get enough funds to get set up back in New Zealand. And I was like, you know what? I don't really care if my registration board doesn't agree with what I'm doing. And I don't know if I should be saying this on here, because I knew that I was making a bigger and deeper difference in people's lives, not just physically, on the emotional level. And that has always been more important to me than treating within a box and feeling like I can't do certain things. So I'm not saying that every osteopath treats this way. And that's why I say I don't really that is my formal training, but it's really life experience, clinical experience that brings all of this together. So yeah, lots of little bits in there. Fast forward, I'm 4 years down the track and I have 2 clinics in Wanaka and Queenstown and a team of osteos and chiropractors. And actually just before Christmas this year, I have stepped back from the clinic solely to manage it. But during COVID, I worried that the clinic was going to fall apart, that we weren't going to have a business anymore. So I used that time during COVID. It was very busy working with the staff, but also launched this project that you found me on, The Art of Listening to Your Body. And that is, I've always been asked to teach this work. How do I do it? Explain it more. And I do want more people to access this, because for a long time, I haven't been able to see new clients in the clinic. And yeah, all of a sudden I built this course and I was trying to think, how can I reach more people? And it was through practitioners who then go and see clients. So I started training practitioners in the simple understanding of the mind-body connection. It does not need to be complicated. There is a lot of complicated material out there, but I started teaching them how to read the body and use their own intuition to facilitate certain processes within their practice. And most importantly, how to facilitate an emotional release in someone, in their clients, so they can then move into that next level of healing and life purpose and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I got into one-to-one coaching, and I'm now developing another 6-week program that is more for anyone and everyone to get this important work.
Well,
My summary.
that's a lot. It's quite a journey you've been on, and very impressive one as well. I mean, I resonate with a lot that you've shared. Like, I feel like we have a very similar, I guess, at least ethnic background in terms of our upbringing. I was also born in Australia, but raised, from a Chinese background, and I feel the same sort of that type of pressure. The type of professions that your parents wish that you sort of went down, and I guess one of the things that is really intriguing to me about your story is that at quite an early age, you mentioned that you sort of thought about choosing your own path, regardless of what anyone thought. And your journey itself is, I guess, the picture of that. You have gone and sort of been quite adventurous and curious, and actively sought what you wanted to do to this particular point. I mean, and I think it's very commendable, because at the same time, the way I think about physical health, and before jumping on, I've told you about my own, I guess, experiences with physical health and cancer and things like this. And I think in the Western world, it's very easy to just simply, like you said, go to the traditional methods and take a pill or take a cream and hope for the best. And 9 times out of 10 it might work, but also it's very much a stopgap type approach. Like, what sort of push you past that point and to really question what is, I guess, traditionally seen as quote unquote the authority on what is the path to healing, so to speak?
Yeah, I should just mention as well, because I talked about my skin problems, and now that I'm on the path that I want to be, my skin has just improved and I don't have skin issues anymore, although it does flare up when I get too stressed or if I'm out of line with my values. So yeah, that's what I'm all about, is that you don't have to be in pain, but you do need to get in line with who it is you really are and express yourself. So what got me to question this
Mhm.
and start working this way is that I think conventional medicine is great. I absolutely support it, and we do need it. It does incredible things. However, yeah, I think we need to stop prescribing pills and creams to people and actually ask them what is going on at a deeper level. So what really pushed me was because my clients were seeing, as osteos, we're still kind of seen a bit alternative. I'm on a mission to change that. But as an osteopath, and especially now doing what I'm doing, I'm a last resort for a lot of people. So they have gone, I say they've been around the block, they've tried all the therapists, they've had the scans, they've had the tests, they've had the surgery, and they're still not better. And I guess that was the benefit of working in busy clinics and seeing a lot of clients in my early days, is I was seeing the lack of results that conventional and traditional medicine was getting. Again, no problem if you get results from conventional medicine, but I encourage that if you are this kind of person that just feels like you're bouncing around trying to get answers and no one can give it to you, and no one has talked to you about your emotional state or tried to do any work around that, then definitely question what is the deeper issue that's going on. And ultimately, what I work on with people is, people say in one sentence, what could you do? And I find that really difficult because it kind of sounds a bit fluffy. Is that I help people connect to their true selves. I help them express their true potential. And that is the ultimate end result, to find out who you are, connect with who you really are, and express exactly who it is you are. And everything else does fall into place. We all have this journey and a path. And when you become so disconnected or a little bit disconnected from your path and your value system, that's when incongruencies and discomfort starts to show up. And sometimes your body will show that physically and mentally. Or it can just be that it seems like life is not working out. So it's definitely not flowing. And it can seem so unattainable for people because, unfortunately, I think in this Western world, and particularly coming from an Asian background, is that you get pushed into these different directions that you don't want to be. So I'm very grateful that I stood up for myself at a young age and just went down that pathway. I think my parents do support what I'm doing now, which I don't know if that's the approval that I was after, but they support what I'm doing, whether or not it's because I see success from it and finances, I'm not too sure. But yeah, I always say finances is secondary, but you do need to value yourself and the work that you deliver for people. So it was a lack of results that I was seeing, and also in myself. I knew that if I had gone to the doctor, they would have given me a cream and not really been able to explain what was going on, skin scraping, whatever. And I guess I have been able to experience being incredibly busy, where it would be so nice if someone told me what was wrong and could diagnose me, and then I've got a reason to wallow in this pain and this discomfort. Or it's easy for me to take a pill. And so do I defy this diagnosis, or do I live into this diagnosis? And I knew there was another way. I'm a big believer in past lives. So I believe that we are in this lifetime to live out a purpose, a destiny, a path. And if we don't in this lifetime, then we will come back and we will relive it in another way, shape, or form. And I don't really want to come back and have to learn in a harder way to get in line with my path. And actually, I recommend, and I did it with my daughter, that people get Vedic astrology readings. I mean, you can do a number of things, human design, just normal astrology. For my daughter, I had her reading done because, I'm me, my husband's himself, and yes, she's our daughter, but it doesn't mean that she's going to become a mountain guide or that she's going to become a therapist like me. But I know what I know, and it might become scary to me if she starts to go down this other path that I'm so unfamiliar with. Like maybe she goes into IT and marketing and I've got no idea about that. And I see clients who are just so stressed out in the IT and marketing world, but actually maybe that is her path. And instead of telling her, no, you should be a therapist because I've been really successful with doing this, is allow her to follow that. Because unfortunately, I do see people who are just so disconnected that they have no idea what they would actually desire if they were given the opportunity.
That's really interesting. And that you're essentially preparing yourself for those possibilities, right? I think a lot of people, who have experienced, I guess you could call it an awakening to what your path is and who you truly want to be. I think once you've been on that path, you're like, well, why doesn't everybody do this?
Yes.
But it's very hard. I think we're also influencing people, especially you guys, right? As parents, she's going to be looking to you for guidance and approval and all of these things. And who knows how we're guiding people in those moments, consciously or unconsciously, right?
Yes. Yeah. And someone's was asking me the other day, like, do you get worried now that you're a parent that you're going to traumatize your child? I'm like, yeah, I'm probably going to traumatize.
That's a pretty heavy question.
I'm probably going to have some sort of impact on her that she's going to have therapy for. But at least if I know that she can work through this and that she can learn to process, I think rather than going, what is wrong with my child? I can positively influence her in that way. I don't believe that I'll be able to fix all of her issues. Having this mindset, she will probably have to seek out her own mentors and coaches in life. But at least if she can be open to that, because it was really hard for me to invest in my first coach, but it's the best thing I've ever done. And now I've got 3 or 4 coaches in my life for various different businesses and things. So yeah, I'm sure that she'll have some issues when she's older. I'm not a
Yeah.
perfect parent.
No. I think nobody is a perfect parent or, is free of any issues. There's one thing that you said, which kind of piqued my curiosity, which is you said that people always ask you like, what do you do? And want like a one sentence response, right?
Yeah.
Like one thing that you do. And to me, it feels like that sort of stems from this desire that, most of us have at large of wanting everything to be distilled, to be really quick, to just have the answer to ask a question, get that answer straight away, and then know what to do from there,
Yep.
right? And from your story and everything you've explained about what you do and how you treat people, it sounds like the exact opposite to actually get to where people will feel comfortable and are free of these, I guess, symptoms of these deeper issues that they're having, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. Sorry, go
Yeah.
on. Okay.
So I am of the personality where I love to get quick results. And that's always happened in any sort of business that I've pursued, that it has grown really fast. And when I look into my own personality and dosha type is that, I'm type A, I'm a pitta, with the Ayurvedic doshas. I'm very goals orientated, very driven. And so I get along really well with other pitta natured people, but I understand the vatas and the kaphas and how they will respond to me. So the vata people, I will overwhelm them. And the kapha people, they are the slow burners. They're usually the more solid built people that they need their sleep. They're the people who sleep in. They need their coffee to wake up. They, if they get woken up in the middle of the night, they are on the wrong side of the bed the next morning. So I understand these different personality types, but me personally, I like to get fast results when I work with a mentor or a coach, and I like to get fast results in my clients, but I will adapt. So over the years, I used to see people appointment to appointment, and then I went to 3 appointments as a commitment, then 5, and now I get people to work with me for 12 weeks minimum, because I know that that's what I require. As long as they surrender to the process, that's what I require to help them have the big cathartic release with their emotions, get through that discomfort where normally people would want to bail out because like, what the hell is coming up? This is wrong. My body's telling me the wrong thing, but I help them interpret that. And then, you peel away the layers, they feel really good. Now is the time to do the deeper work. Who is it that you want to be? How do you want to express yourself to the world? Whereas most people in Western society stop when the pain's gone and then never go on to do that deeper work. So a little bit like meditation. I feel amazing on a meditation retreat, but then I stick with it for a couple of weeks, a few months, maybe a year, and I feel really good. So then I stop. So we often stop doing the things that really help us. So 12 weeks can sound like a long time, but often when you look back at your last 3 months, if you're someone in pain, and look at where you were 3 months ago versus now, you can be a lot further when you work with someone over a 12-week period. So most of the time for me, when I work with people, the first 4 weeks is cleaning up the mess, purging those emotions, getting these big cathartic releases, which I find really fascinating. And then we can start to do the work around who is it that I want to be, maybe business coaching type stuff. And then usually, as long as they've done the work and done their homework and been fully present and surrendered, then usually after 12 weeks, they feel like a completely different person. Their relationships have changed, their communication has changed. It's not surprising when relationships sometimes fall apart or they get stronger, jobs get quit, resigned from, and people that start to stand up for who they truly are. So 12 weeks isn't too long. I think the work doesn't end there, but you can get massive changes. And this is where I think it's important to just matchmake yourself with different coaches and their personalities. And I'll let people know if I'm not for them. And I've seen enough people now that I kind of can work out who are going to be the ones that are a little bit slower and not beat myself up about not meeting my own expectations of moving them through things quickly.
Yeah. And, I follow a very similar, I guess, method and approach to you, with my, one-on-one mentorship. Mine's minimum 6 months relationship, because like you said, the work that, we're trying to guide people through, it's not really about giving people, answers or anything like this, right? And I think that that's we share a similar, I guess, understanding of this, is that as guides and mentors and things like this, it's never really about having some sort of answer for anyone and giving it to them and saying, here you go, take that away and live the most beautiful life going forward, right? It's really about holding their hand and going inwards into themselves and finding their own answers that are really lying dormant within their hearts. And I think that's the key. Like, and it's a nice way to sort of paint the same analogy with this Western culture of searching for this silver bullet, or this magic pill that's going to cure everything. Oh, I've tried this new fad, it doesn't work, I'm trying the next new fad, or I'm going to ask the next new specialist, or this and that. But realistically, right, if we really sat down and understand for ourselves internally what are the questions we're trying to ask ourselves and have answered, a lot of the time there's some great revelations inside those.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And it often comes through the act of slowing down, or, taking that step back to work with someone, or meditating. I know a number of my clients and just stories from people where a lot more pain comes up when they start meditating, and they think, I'm not a good meditator. And it's like, well, no, like, actually that's part of the process for you to not
Totally.
react to the pain that comes up.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like I said before, I have a meditation program. I'm a teacher of meditation, and I get that all the time with regards to people just saying that it's not for them. Meditation is not for me, or I've tried it before, a couple of times. I've sat for 10 minutes and it was really difficult. So my mind was still racing, this and that. So they stopped. But like you said, this is only the very first, sort of door that we have to try and push ourselves through before, the myriad of other doors present themselves. And you're just like, it's like an infinite sort of hallway that we can continue to, penetrate if we only, sit through and actually consciously want to do that for ourselves. So, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the fun starts, and it becomes a curious and enjoyable and playful journey, rather than, navigating through all the pain and the mess.
I what I'm really thinking about now from what you guys have just explained is, and it's coming to my mind, is anyone who seems to be in a place that they actually want to be in their life, it feels to me like they've gone deep,
Yeah.
right? Like they've passed a certain threshold and then kept going, right? And you mentioned earlier that, a lot of times people, they will say the pain will stop, and then they'll stop doing what stopped the pain, right?
Yes.
And I'm guilty of that myself, like if I've had some sort of pain and I've gone to the osteopath, like to my osteopath, and it's been all sweet, for the next 2 weeks, I'm like really careful with how I position myself in my seat. I'll stretch religiously. I'll make sure that I'm doing fluid motion, and making sure my lymphatic system is doing its thing. But then slowly, you creep back into these old habits, and then the pain returns. So I'm really curious about that, as someone who helps people the way you do. Why do people do that, in your opinion?
Hmm. I think it's just human nature, is that often pain is what drives us. It's a little bit like it's easier to talk about negative things, negative gossip, rather than reinforcing the positive in people. And I do think that we have been brought up in a Western culture that is, you're the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. You wait until you're in pain before you do something about it, rather than this act of prevention. And sometimes I think it is people's journey to never actually dive deeper, and they will go into the next lifetime and they will relive it in a different way. And maybe in 3 lifetimes, they will get the message and they will get in line with their purpose and their values. But this is not for everybody. I mean, it would be amazing. Imagine the world that we would live in if everyone was in line with their purpose and their vision. But um, I think there is a lesson in itself to witness people who never get out of their pain. Um, Another analogy would be, there's a lot of studies around that sometimes having a stress-free life is just as stressful or as hard as having a challenging life. So I do think that we need to have the people out there who suffer and have the discomfort to teach us lessons and make life a little bit interesting. But yeah, I do think we need to condition out of ourselves and change the belief system that we only fix and react things when something feels wrong or broken or in pain. And that's my mission, is to really change this whole paradigm of healthcare, is that we become more preventative, we become more aware of our bodies, and we pick up the signs and symptoms long before. And that is a story that you often hear of people who, want to teach us the lessons in life, that, don't end up with a cancer, don't end up with this pain, live your life. And actually, a lot of the time when they do their deeper work and they reflect back, they knew something was wrong. They knew it was coming, but sometimes it's this denial. And I think people will often not go to the doctor to find things out because they're scared of what that might mean. And I think when we face death, that is when we can, we can do the deepest healing and become more aware of who we actually are. Again, some people at that point will never do that deeper work, but others have, in that space of time where they're faced with death, can have the deepest healing and transformation. And then some people go into remission.
Mm. Yeah, I think, look, my personal journey, I can really, see a lot of parallels there with what you've just mentioned. Like, like I said, in the corporate world, I was doing really well. I was quite successful, and I could have continued climbing this ladder and, being this atypical corporate soldier. But deep down, I always tell this story that I hated it. I really didn't like what I was doing, and I knew it. There was always an inkling in me that I was in the wrong place, but I was really afraid, or too afraid to, answer those questions, because essentially what it meant, if I did ask the questions, it would be the, dissolving of this identity that I held so dear at the time. This hotshot corporate in finance. But then, that continual, ignoring of it, and also the escape of it through, the use of drugs, antidepressants, alcohol, and all this sort of thing, I really believe was a big factor in, that physical manifestation of cancer that came up and became the point in my life where it was really the tangible wake-up call to say that you cannot ignore this anymore. And I always say it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. A blessing in disguise, because, although it was a very challenging period in my life, I would not be doing what I'm doing right now. I'd probably still be climbing that ladder and hating my life, and, drowning myself in whatever illicit substances that I could. And I think it's a great lesson and a great story. Like you said, it's one of those things. Everyone has their time, and it will come up to a point where everyone has those sorts of catalytic moments where they simply cannot ignore the fact that they are turning their back on their truth, essentially, right? And I think that going back to, what you were talking about in terms of why people might do this, and I think this is like also a factor of, modern society and our I guess our drive towards advancement, and what this does for us, it's enabled beautiful things. You and I, all three of us, were connected on different countries, and technology is an amazing thing. But at the same time, if we're not careful, we sort of get lazy, and we get really attached to this sense of comfort, that technology brings us. But that's why I think it's really important. I'm a really big proponent of Eastern philosophy, and I dive deep with that stuff, and that's the sort of doctrines that I sort of follow. Is that these the way that they see life is so much different to how we're taught and we're brought up, especially in the West, right? There's a beautiful saying where they say, before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water, but also after enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. the work never, finishes, right? The work is moment to moment until, your physical existence, your time to leave this path, this life. And I think that's a beautiful way to paint it. But it is also a very, I guess, a difficult concept to grasp, especially being brought up in a Western environment that so opposes the work. We try to get away from it so, fervently. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's a paradoxical, but it's also a beautiful journey to venture down.
Yeah. Oh, really well said. And I do think that it is possible for everyone to be able to attain this, but it may not be now for you. And yeah, sometimes I think people do get more into that preventative mindset when a friend is diagnosed with cancer or a friend passes away or a family member. Um, and yeah, if deep down inside, these messages do resonate with you, is try and listen to it, because it's not a pleasant place to be in pain physically or especially mentally.
Yeah, for sure. And when we do get to those points where it's too much, then the work's also a lot harder. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. I often say to people who are wanting to have kids and they're investigating this work, as I said, do it before you have kids, because otherwise you're going to, you've got the space and time. I do work with parents that have kids, obviously, but to schedule this work in, they need to have a lot of space and time to themselves to really get the full effect of it. Otherwise, it can take a little bit longer. But do the work before you have kids. Otherwise, your kids become an excuse as to why you can't do the work. But also, if you continue to store this emotion and these belief systems and these behaviors that actually negatively impact you, you're just going to pass that on to your kid. And they will trigger you, because they are amazing at pushing your buttons and amazing at being little mirrors to you, and they will show you where you really need to do the work.
Totally. And I guess I would echo that same sort of, sentiment towards any sort of close relationship that we choose to have in our lives. I mean, I often say that, our greatest teachers are our closest relationships. And, the people who are closest to us, like you said, our children or, our significant others, they're the ones who are most capable of pushing our buttons. And I think that is for a reason. Like you said, it's they are the greatest, I guess, objective mirror for yourself to reflect upon. And even getting into relationships, it's one of these things. If you are not really clear on who you are, and you haven't done the work to do so, then later down the line you may shed some of your old identity that your partner once knew. It's a very difficult situation as well. I've seen many of these types of relationships that fall apart once there was a revelation in terms of understanding who they truly were, and that a relationship was built upon really this surface level attraction. So that in itself, the inability for one person, let alone two, to collectively come together and mutually work through this sort of stuff, it's like it's a very tough sort of journey to walk.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's something that often happens with my clients in those first couple of weeks, when everything's coming to the surface, is their intimate relationships, or just the people they live with, are really challenged. And I pre-warn people, is like, your relationship might break up, but we're going to make sure that you don't just walk away from it because you're avoiding the harder conversations that you're not having. Because otherwise you go into the next relationship, you repeat. People do it with jobs. They quit the job because they hate their boss. Is it you, or is it your boss that's actually the problem? So yeah, when you start to actually become more of yourself, all of a sudden it's like, hey, this is not the person I got into a relationship with. So you either choose to grow or go your separate ways, and not stay in the comfort of a relationship, which ultimately is causing you more discomfort.
For sure. And there was another thing which came up from your story, which I want to ask you about, which is, it seems to me like whenever you suppress something emotionally, it manifested physically for you. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. And for me, it wasn't so much about past stuff, although that has come up with certain people that I have worked with. For me, it was more, I was suppressing the expression of myself as a therapist in my profession, and also being able to openly speak about this work as well. So, yeah, that's why I'm happy to come on here and share. And over the years experience and getting good results with people is I'm okay with being challenged now as well. Whereas maybe previously I would have kept that inside because I didn't want to spark conflict or engage in a healthy argument with someone. So yeah, mine was definitely, it was more around future expression of self versus childhood trauma and all this kind
Yeah.
of stuff. I mean, I still went into that, but it wasn't like severely traumatic for me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, of course. And the reason I ask is because I guess I'm curious to know, with the people that you work with, is that a sort of common thread that you're seeing with people these days, is that they're just not expressing themselves and just
Yeah.
pushing stuff down, and then it's manifesting physically, and then that's telling you something about what they're suppressing?
Yep. Yeah. So this is where it comes into reading the body, because some people are really unaware about what is the actual experience that they're suppressing. So I say that we have experiences, events, and traumas in our life that are all associated with emotion that wants to be expressed at the time. If we don't, then that's when it gets suppressed. But sometimes we become such good suppressors that we are so disconnected and unaware. So if you go to a therapist and they say, what do you want to work on? And you're like, well, I don't know what I want to work on, but I know something's not right. My life isn't flowing. My relationships are terrible. I can't hold down a job. Those are the kind of people that I see, because it's like, well, no one else can work out, but physically, how's your body feeling? Mentally, how is your body feeling? So I take them through a history, like what are all the ailments you've had? And like go down to the detail, talk about the annoying click that you get in the ear or the itchy fourth finger that you get. They all tell a story, and I like to just brain dump on me, what are all your issues? And I will knit it together. So your physical ailments, where are your organs not functioning? When do you wake up in the middle of the night? How's your energy? So that's where I help people interpret, okay, based on I always talk about hips because it's a really common area. Based on your right hip pain, you might have, this represents sacral chakra issues, which is around relationships in life. So we're looking at parents, mum, dad, your intimate relationships, your past relationships, your desire to have children or any issues with children, or past pregnancies, abortions, miscarriages. And then relationships in the workplace, relationships with money. If we look at your right hip, it could have to do with males in your life. So let's think of father, brother, uncle, cousin, whatever. Males in your life in previous relationships. So a previous relationship that maybe broke down in a way that you didn't want it to, and you never got to express what you wanted to. Maybe there was an affair. So when someone's got right hip pain, these are the kind of things that I will say to them, and I will watch to see if they have a response. Either they might tighten up, they might burst out into tears, or their body might just like flush red, or they break out in a sweat, or they just fidget on the spot. So I'm trying to pick up on, it's just the human behavior, the body language that tells me, oh, I've hit a nerve and that's where I need to go. A lot of people think that the small events in their life are irrelevant. Like, oh yeah, doesn't that happen to everyone? I'm like, well, no, it doesn't happen to everyone. And not everyone holds on to emotion around events like this. So it can be the severe, horrible stuff that happens to people, physically and emotionally. And it can be the minor things that, it wouldn't affect me, but it's affected this person. So it's their story. So yeah, I help bring to light and bring awareness to what emotions they might actually need to process. And then I actually take them through processing emotions. So quite typically people will say, I know exactly what it is. And it might be one thing. Quite often there's a lot more under the surface though. So we start with what they know is an issue. What memory from childhood or 2 weeks ago is really burning at them, and they know it's causing like heartburn, physical discomfort, however it's manifesting for them. And yeah, so often we are going back into the past and expressing the emotions that never got a chance to be expressed. And this is what I love. It's all about, you can say anything you want. Like things that you wouldn't say to the person's face. If you think this, you can say it out loud in this space with me, online or in person. And I say, you can say the immoral things, you can say the nasty things, you say whatever you want and just let it rip and bring the volume into it. It's quite funny because sometimes people are saying really harsh words, but they're speaking in a completely normal voice. And I'm like, that's not how that would come out. That I won't even say it because, yeah, it's probably a bit too harsh. But, you know, it's like, hey, you know, say it as if you were saying this to this person because you hate them so much for how they made you feel. And again, like, we're just expressing this because actually it could be the person that this happened to that's actually completely in the wrong. But it's all about just expressing, this is how I felt in the moment. And again, for us as humans to just accept that this is how someone felt, to not take it personally. And then once we've cleaned up all that background stuff, then often it's, okay, who are we going to move into the future? And this is where a lot of people say to me, I think I'll do the work on my own. And I'm like, that's amazing and great if you get the results that you need. But when we do the work on ourselves, we often don't see the real work that we need to do. And it takes someone who is willing to speak the truth to you and see the deeper issues and bring that to light. Because by nature, we don't go towards pain. We have an aversion to pain and we seek comfort and we seek pleasure. So why would we make ourselves have this physical and physiological and emotional purge when it's so uncomfortable? And yeah, you kind of need someone to hold your hand through that process. And if you could do the work yourself, which a lot of people can, but if you could do the work yourself to be the person you want to be, why are you not that person right now? Because that is the other end of the discomfort is, oh my gosh, I'm now going to put myself out to the world. What are people going to think of me? I don't want to be criticized. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be bullied, because that will happen. Because when you've got an opinion that you stand behind that is a little bit controversial, people will question you and people will try to bring you down. Sometimes it's just because they don't understand. But you know that you've moved through that when you can actually speak and not have that big emotional reaction or that nervousness behind yourself.
Mm. And I think it's super important work as well, just because, like we said, we've been saying this throughout this discussion, really, like the type of environment that we all have been collectively brought up in, it really doesn't, promote this type of emotional expression. Like, it's actually the opposite. Somehow, we are condemned for expressing ourselves and our truths, and so we, hide behind walls of safety and masks and things like this. And I think, especially, like, speaking from my own personal experience, I think men in general society are supposed to be painted in a certain way. We're sort of meant to be stoic in disposition and never expressing emotions. We don't know how to cry. Apparently we don't have tear ducts and things like this, but it's so false and it's so damaging, like you said, and that's why this type of work is super important. And I think a beautiful thing for us to, I guess, leave the audience with, and just to think about what it is that they're holding back, and just to ask themselves the questions and seek that advice, seek that guidance. Like you said, Jin, you've got many mentors in different spaces still, and you mentor people, and likewise for myself, I have a mentor and I mentor people. I think mentors are always great for us as individuals to take us on the journey and show us those, or even just press those blind spots, or make us aware of those where we think we might have it all covered. So yeah, I think we could, probably have you on and get you on another episode. There's so much we can, cover for sure. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to give you the floor to, I guess, share with the audience where people can find you.
Oh, sure. Thank you. And I do think it's great that you are guys and sharing more of this information, and you, Leslie, having the corporate background, and Shaun as well, having the corporate background, because there are a lot of miserable people in corporate, but there's also a lot of happy people.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully if you're in corporate and you're suffering, don't. Take that leap to be more of yourself. So yeah, thanks. You can find me on theartoflisteningtoyourbody.com. My main places that I post information is on Instagram and Facebook. So the Art of Listening to Your Body is the handle. And I do have a free Facebook group on there where I go live and I answer people's questions. And I've recently just started to do like little pop-up coaching. So you can jump on and you can have a conversation with me to really understand the depths of this. I have a podcast called The Art of Listening to Your Body where I share little short snippets of insights. And I also interview people who have been in positions of pain, had the disease states or emotional issues, and they have come out the other side and they really just want to share their story so that you know that they have been there and it is possible to make a change. And yeah, I run practitioner trainings called Emotional Body Training, and that's a small intimate group so that you really are held in a space and you go through the process yourself. So you know how uncomfortable you make your clients. And I am just about to launch a new program called Release, which is a 6-week program. And that's catered to anyone and everyone who wants to learn more about themselves. And if you want to do the work yourself, is that I do give you the techniques on how to do the emotional release work on yourself. But yeah, I want people to stop kind of reading so much and get into the doing and the action, and just know that mind-body work is accessible to everyone. It doesn't have to be complex and hard to understand. Yeah, so you can find me on those platforms, and I work with people one-to-one as well. And that's kind of limited as to my availability.
Wonderful. And yeah, if anyone resonates with Jin's message or any of the words she's spoken, I'm sure many of you will. I really implore you to sort of check out any of her work and get involved. I'm probably going to be checking out some of your work as well, some of your programs. So we will share all the links in the show notes so people can find you easily. Shaun, where can people find you, bro?
Yeah, easiest place to find me is on Instagram. So it's just Shaun_Coop. So that's SHAUN_COOP. You can just send me a message there and we can connect. And how about you, Les?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, findingspace.co. Check out any of my new programs there, or if you want to hit me up for a one-on-one consultation, you can send me a message through there. Otherwise, on Facebook and Instagram, the handle is @findingspace.co. You can also check out Shaun and I's new program that we recently launched, True North. More information there is true-north.co, and our Instagram handle is @true_north.co. We'll be running many cohorts per year, so check the website to see when the next cohort, when we're accepting, and send your application if you feel the call.
Cool. And as always, guys, if you took something from this conversation, which I know you did, I took plenty and plenty. I'm going to be going back listening to this one, and I'll definitely be checking out your work, Jin. Thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate just your transparency, and want to acknowledge, you said that you just want to be who you want to be, and you realized that early, and that, it sounded to me like you were expressing those things and felt like you couldn't. Now you're doing the exact opposite. You're just sharing what's on your heart, I can tell, and helping a lot of people in the process. It's beautiful. So I want to acknowledge you for that. And if people are listening and something has resonated with you today, please just share it with one other person. That's how we grow the podcast, because we truly do believe that there are nuggets in these conversations, things that, really pluck on a heartstring or, strike a nerve for you that can help you to delve further and delve deeper, think better, feel better. And when we do those things better, we can do better. So until next time, guys, thanks for listening.
See you guys.